Welcome back, Bitcoin accumulation country. My name is Phil. This is the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. We're in season 2, and this is episode 40. Hope everybody's having a great week so far. We've got a really special episode with BTC Socialist. You may know him from the roundtable episodes. He always has these really cool microcontrollers, and he's the one always talking about the pay terminals. And he's essentially like always bringing the, while a lot of people are trying to make the technology on beefier and beefier tech, he's looking at the microcontrollers and trying to make smaller applications that are I think much easier to implement with Lightning. Anyways, it's really amazing stuff, and I'm super excited to have him on the show. So, but before we get into that, I actually have a pretty interesting offer for the Fun with Bitcoin listeners. I ended up fixing somebody in the Bitcoin community. Well, I didn't end up fixing it. I troubleshot his node, his Lightning node for quite a few hours, and I ended up getting a discount code for the Fun with Bitcoin listeners, and it's for a website called moedarags.com. It's a bunch of really cool Bitcoin merch, t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers, aprons, all kinds. It's really, really cool stuff. I ended up getting 2 t-shirts myself. I got a Reckless t-shirt and a Orange Coin #1. I just totally love the swag, so I'm totally happy to support it. So anyways, there's a discount code that's going to be in the show notes. It's, when you go to checkout, you just simply have to put in the code FUNWITHBITCOIN, and you get a 15% discount. And that's moedarags.com. So anyways, without further ado, here is my discussion with BTC Socialist.
All right, Bitcoin accumulation country. Thank you very much for joining me on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. That's right, we are going through a rebrand. We were Fun with Crypto when I was on my desperate search, but now we're Fun with Bitcoin officially. The first person I'm going to be talking to on my rebrand is actually somebody that I met on the Lightning Node Roundtable, and I've grown to become pretty good friends with him in the Bitcoin space. And he's shown me some really cool stuff with these Lightning Pay terminals, and every time I speak to him, he always blows my mind. I am talking about none other than BTC Socialist. Thank you so much for being on my show, man.
It's okay. No, I very much approve of the name change, and I think you'll please a lot of the OG crypto as in cryptography guys, because I know it really gets their back when people call cryptocurrency crypto, because it's obviously for them that's cryptography. And I saw an interview with who was it with? It was one of the guys he worked with, Hal Finney, and they were just saying how he would hate it, people calling cryptocurrencies crypto.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's a good change. It's a good change to go Bitcoin.
Thank you very much.
Bitcoin. Cool,
man. Cool. So look, I think. So I know you do a whole lot of stuff with the tech side, but you're also on World Crypto Network. So I mean, to me, you're
I know they haven't changed that to World Bitcoin Network.
Oh, not yet.
How much I've asked them to, they haven't.
But tell me this, right? Like the one thing I think I've never heard was your rabbit hole story, man. So how did you get into the space?
Well, I was one of those victims of 2008. I bought my flat in 2007, I think, and then I was like a young guy, first flat, getting my foot on the ladder and all that stuff. And then the next year, I was like 40% negative equity, owning like tens of thousands of pounds. So because of the house market crash. And particularly in where I bought, it was very much boom time. So it was like a sort of a 1-bed apartment in an area where they were building thousands of apartments during the boom years. So anyway, I was able to kind of eventually clean up that mess. But in the process of cleaning up that mess, I didn't have like the best sort of. So in the UK, we have a kind of a credit rating if we apply for credit. And I wasn't someone who ever had credit cards. I always tried to avoid debt. I hated the idea of debt and lending, borrowing money from people. But obviously you have to do it when you buy a flat or a house or whatever. But there were a few months, I think, where I'd like missed a repayment here, missed a repayment there, whatever. But eventually I sort of sold the place, wrapped up the negative equity in a loan, which I was repaying. And then years later, I was a teacher. I was trained as a teacher. I started out in sort of working with special needs kids, and then I then became a teacher specifically with kids with emotional behavioural difficulties, sort of teenagers. I was able to get an all right salary and save a little bit of money, and so I had some money in the bank, and I was like, okay, what should I do with this money now? So I thought, I'll use it as a mortgage for a house. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try buying a house, and again, hopefully there will be another economic crisis, and I won't lose all my money. So I'll give it a whirl. So I found a house which me and my partner liked, and we had a child and stuff. So I went to the bank, and I sat down with the bank manager, and he said, okay, I'll do a credit rating search on you, to see whether what packages we can offer you. And then he does this, he taps away on his keyboard for a second, and then he looks at me and he says, are you bankrupt? And I was like, no, I don't think I am. And he said, your credit report is so bad, you should probably go bankrupt. And I was, and then come back in 6 years, because that's when it's kind of cleared. And I was thinking, really? And it really was like, I had friends who, during the boom times, they got loads of debt and credit cards and loans, tens of thousands of pounds, and they bought themselves fancy TVs and cars and stuff. I was never that guy. And it was just kind of, there's a few missed payment, a few months where I wasn't able to pay the mortgage, and that was about it really. But because I didn't play the credit game, so I hadn't got credit cards, I hadn't built up a credit rating. I always used like pay as you go, and I just hated the idea of owing people money. Like my credit report was just terrible. Like the only experience they'd had with me hadn't been great. So I couldn't get a mortgage. So I was like, right, fuck you. And by that point, I kind of knew a decent amount enough about Bitcoin. So I just took all the money which I was going to use for a mortgage deposit, and I just bought Bitcoin, and then held on to it. And I was teaching, and I loved my job teaching. It was very demanding, the sorts of kids I worked with, but it was very rewarding as well. We did a lot of good work, and we turned a lot of their lives around. It was cool.
That's amazing.
But it got to the point where the service we were working for was quite an expensive service, because it's kind of one-to-one teaching or one-to-two teaching. So the service was dismantled eventually when the sort of austerity stuff kind of hit the local councils in the UK. So it kind of took a while really actually after 2008 for it to happen. I suppose it's probably the quantitative easing kind of kept the wheels turning for a while. But when all the austerity measures came in, our sorts of services, like expensive services, working directly with impoverished people, they were the first to be hit. So our service was kind of like turned upside down, and it was just turned into kind of a regular, normal sort of special needs school, and the good creative work we were doing with the kids before we weren't able to do anymore. So that was really sad. But thankfully, kind of Bitcoin had got to the point then where I was able to take a little bit of time off, and then just start fiddling around and doing little projects and little things on the side to kind of keep me afloat. So I was kind of put in that position where I had some means where I could step back and then concentrate just on. My actual plan was to, because the work thing was quite stressful. So my actual plan was to do nothing for a couple of years. But then after about a month, I got bored. And that's when I started thinking, well, how can I contribute back to the ecosystem? So I'd done some electronic stuff with the kids when I taught them. And I taught, so I thought I could probably do some tutorials or whatnot. And that's how I kind of got into doing some of the electronics projects which I've been doing, working with Bitcoin. And then I also thought as well that, being pretty left, what you would probably describe as a socialist, then I thought I could probably stick my oar in there as well, and I don't know, try and sort of decentralize something, because to me it always felt like Bitcoin originally was politically diverse. There was a lot of anarchists, but quite a lot of lefties, within Bitcoin. I think there still is a lot of lefties in Bitcoin, but back in the day they were a little bit more louder. But it feels like Bitcoin kind of, it seems that there's this sort of branding which has started to come along with Bitcoin, and that's that sort of like far right libertarian brand. And I think it's just the loudest people in the room, really. But I don't really think it does it much good. If we want this to be like a standard for the world, you're not going to win people over by trying to make a community coin. So like it's like saying that gold is libertarian, or it sinks in with libertarian ideals and sort of some of the ideas of Austrian economics, but in that same respect, Marx himself loved gold and thought gold was a good money. So So there's also lots of lefty ideologies which can also sink in with kind of what Bitcoin is and the idea of apolitical money. So yeah, so I was kind of quite keen on being quite loud about that as well, as loud as I could be. Hence the name BTC Socialist, which I get a lot of flack for.
Yeah,
it's kind of a shame as well, because like the electronic stuff I do is really good, if I don't say so myself. And it's
that's awesome.
Well, I mean, it's good because I get good feedback from people, you know, and like the people who actually watch the videos and the people who follow some of the projects, and they make little spin-off projects, which are far better than my original projects. But it kind of like, I seem to be helping inspire people to make some cool stuff. And I think kind of my name kind of holds me back. Like if I had like, I don't know, if I was called like, I don't know, BTC Libertarian or whatever, then I'd have many more people kind of like experimenting with the projects and building stuff. So it's kind of a shame that kind of holds me back the name. But in the same respect, like I think it's important for those on the left to raise a flag and say, hold on, guys, we are here. I don't know, which has been happening, you know, even within like the circle of some of the core developers, they felt the need to kind of raise their hand and say, hold on.
I was gonna say I got that was when I told a few people that I was gonna be interviewing you, because they've heard the lightning roundtables. The questions each of their questions was, ask him why he called himself BTC Socialist. So it's like, it has an interesting. I personally never really, you know, I didn't really think of it. I don't know. I just figured like whatever. It's a name. We all have like, you know, we all just have avatars and we all have symbols and random names. So I was like, okay, that's what he's calling himself.
So I mean, to me, it's I think it's good to be quite open-minded in that way. But for me, it's that, you know, it's people's money owned and regulated by the people. So it's socialized control. We talk about decentralization. Decentralization is socializing control. That's what it is. And I think the part of the problem is, you know, so if you Google define socialism, you get the definition, which is that the means of production, manufacturing and distribution be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. But I think people conflate quite often when people have, you know, when societies have tried to push that idea of stuff being owned by the community as a whole, they've tried to wield it through the technology of state and government, and that hasn't worked very well at all.
No.
So I think understandably, a lot of people conflate, you know, the word socialism with, you know, the USSR and with Mao and Pol Pot and all these other horrific examples, which is fair in a way, but the actual kernel of socialized control is it's still called socialism. It's not, you know. So, you know, when I say I'm a socialist, I'm advocating community control. I'm not advocating like Stalin or, you know, any of those guys.
Exactly. You know?
I mean, so yeah, I mean that's a very broad subject on its own, but I kind of feel like society moves forward and people become more liberated over time, and freer over time. I don't think we're at the end. I don't think that the capitalist mode of production is the only mode of production we're ever going to have, and I believe society will evolve. I want to end up in a Star Trek utopia. And I believe that there's certain things, you know, like sort of overconsumption and the effect we're having on the planet. There's certain contradictions which mean that we can't continue with that mode of production, no matter how productive it is. I mean, it's incredibly productive, and it, you know, as Mark said, it pulls the whole world together and with trade routes. But it can't last forever. And in fact, a lot of it's about just taking control. So, you know, it's about not wanting there to be centralized control. It's about wanting there to be decentralized, socialized control over production. So if you look at, I use the free and open source because it's controversial. I use the free and open source software movement as a good example. So, you know, back in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, the software developers, they were being forced to sign these non-disclosure agreements because people wanted to have proprietary ownership over software. The companies wanted to have proprietary ownership over the software and make money off it. And then the developers and the engineers who actually built the software were like, no, we want, it's our software. Like, we want to be able to share it with our mates, and it's science and it's data. We want to be able to, you know, pass it around to people who want to use it and offer it to people for free. So that's why Richard Stallman broke away and came up with the Free Software Foundation, and that whole movement started. So I think when somebody tries to have proprietary control over some things, it's not for the benefit of the liberty of most. So, and I see that with just the capitalist mode of production. I'm not saying that in any means do I have an answer. So the point is I advocate, like, say a worker cooperative, for example. But, I understand that they're grossly inefficient. They don't work very well. And it's much easier just to have a guy just giving orders from the top and those orders to be followed by the managers and whatever. But, I think just because that's not something which will work right now, it's something which the technology to allow something like that type of mode of production to exist should be explored. It could potentially give people a more, liberate more people and help make more people free. So it's difficult because often people will be like, well, you used to call yourself a socialist, you just want state control and this and that, yada yada. And I'm like, well, no, actually, I just want decentralized control. I just want socialized control, even over production. But I'm not saying it should be forced. I'm just saying it's something which I want to explore. And I think that Bitcoin, so being able to have a more direct form of democracy, not have representative democracy, have a sort of more direct form of democracy through having this digitally scarce data and being able to sign things and prove who you are. I think there's an ability there for that to help foster worker cooperatives, for example. So so I suppose a good way of putting it is I want a free and open source society where control is decentralized, where someone comes up with an idea, like some of the ideas for the project which I built, and then they release it, and then other people build on those ideas, and then you just contribute where you can, like you contribute as doing the podcasts. It's you find something you can do, and then you contribute in the way which you can. And then if everyone does that, then we can all share that collective system which we're all working towards and building. And that, so that's, each to his own ability, each to his own need, which is kind of the tagline of communism, which is, I'm not calling myself a communist, but I'm just saying that so there's some ideas in there which, again, you say something like communism, and people think, oh, okay, it's North Korea. And it's like, oh, well, they've tried to force this thing using state.
But let's point out, right? Let's point out that those, because true communism has never actually been a true communal utopia, has never actually been enacted. It's only in theory, what we've had in reality, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of flack for this, but what we've had in reality are the extreme applications of those ideas in the most negative as negatively as they could be applied. Yeah. So I think there's like a spectrum,
Sure. People were aware of it as well. So like Lenin with his vanguard and his the idea of giving the industry, the powers of industry to state, and then state would then, this was the idea, that state would then foster worker control over industry and help develop and culture that to happen. Well, that never happened. So Lenin, they took control of industry, state took control of industry, and then it kept it. And Lenin, till his dying day, he said that, the USSR was not socialist. But then Stalin said, yeah, this is socialism, and then obviously that kind of dystopia then is it's within the benefit of if he's saying it's socialism, and then if the US, who are then battling that ideology, say, yeah, that is socialism, look how horrible it is, it kind of benefits both parties. So it's I would argue, so Marx said that socialism would come out of the contradictions within capitalism, but you have to have like full-blown, unabashed capitalism, and then those contradictions would bring about something like socialism, and then maybe eventually socialism would bring about something. Contradictions within socialism would bring about something like communism. I would argue that we haven't even had like a truly capitalist state yet. We haven't had truly free markets, in a developed country. You got free markets in like an undeveloped, backward country. I don't know, sub-Saharan Africa or something. There's no one controlling markets there. But in a developed way, we haven't had truly free markets. So, when people say, "Well, this was communist or this was socialist," I'm like, hold on, like I don't even think we've had like capitalism yet properly.
That's right.
And maybe we never will. Like maybe like, so the Marxist time, for example, was very different to ours. Like now we have a lot of companies are owned by the people who work in the companies. They have shares and they have options in the company, and so a lot of his ideas were kind of taken forward as a way to trying to alleviate some people's suffering and better working conditions and access to education, healthcare, this sort of thing. So who knows? But that's I think it's very important for me to say that I'm not advocating stuff.
I was gonna say we just went off on a serious tangent.
It's hard not to though. This is the problem. It's really so hard.
I know. It's like you try not to touch that topic too much, and it's like, and then you just slightly open the floodgate, and it's like,
it really triggers people as well. Like I've had people in conferences when we've had these kind of debates, and I'm like, look, I'm not advocating stuff. I'm just advocating socialized control, community control, or community control over regulation as a whole, over a system, over industry, over software, over society. I just want democracy everywhere. And then people, I've had some people like almost squaring up to me over it, seriously. And I was like,
of course, man, people get passionate.
Like, yeah, and a lot of people as well. Their families. I mean, they're psychogenic. Like their parents would have been in Russia, or they would have lived in some of these horrible societies, and then you have this dickhead come along saying, "Yeah, I'm a socialist," and they're like, "Fuck you, man."
But again,
hard for them.
Again, the most extreme applications, the most extreme negative applications of an idea, and this is what the human being was able to create. It's wonderful that we can create these ideas and theories, but the reality is that once we start to introduce human vice into the mix, right, and incentives, the ideas go, you know what I mean? They go to the incentives.
Well, I mean, you have to use the right technology as well. So, like, maybe the right technology.
That's a good point. A technology maybe that doesn't enable that.
They use the technology. I mean, like, so on my little tagline on my Twitter, it's replace state with Bitcoin, specifically because I don't want state. I want to get rid of state. And I think you can get rid of a lot of state by having something like Bitcoin. So there's a really nice quote by San Simone, who was a sort of a political theorist, philosopher guy in the 1700s. And he said, one day the art of governing will be at an end, and it will be replaced by a new art, the art of administering things. So the idea that people are always going to govern over people, when you get the right technology, there will be administration without people governing over other people. And when I see something like Bitcoin, I think that kind of ticks that box. It's you can have like an organized system with rules and with collective decision making without having to have figureheads, without having to have people representing you democratically, and that's incredibly exciting to me. I think it's great, and I think something should be explored. But also, I mean, like, I also very much value. So, I would say I'm a libertarian as well. Like, I want liberty for people, but I don't think you can have liberty with, the current kind of capitalist system. I just don't think you can have it. True liberty. You can have a lot more liberty than people have had in other systems like feudalism or slavery or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's relative liberty.
Yeah, exactly.
Relative
but, I mean,
liberty.
I think you can always have more liberty.
Yeah.
And that's something worth working towards. So no, it's it's a funny one.
So here let's.
There's plenty of times though, because
yeah.
In Europe we have a lot of so say if you go to the Congress, Chaos Communication Congress, they're all like lefty anarchist types,
Yeah.
And some of them would probably call themselves socialists as well, but they're all lefty anarchists. So I could have very easily just called myself BTC anarchist, and then everyone would be like, "Oh, that's great, yeah, we love anarchy."
You should. BTC soft anarchist. It's just soft anarchy,
Well, I mean, like, Chomsky says that anarchism's actually kind of like hardcore socialism. It's controlled, decentralized so much that you don't have any governing bodies at all. You have, it's democracy from the bottom up, isn't it? There was a quote by Arthur Rosenberg, who's a famous trade union guy, and he said that this is really going to trigger people as well. But he said this was back in the 1800s. He said that every anarchist is first a socialist, but not every socialist is an anarchist. So I would say, yeah, which is interesting, isn't it? But anarchism historically was always a left movement. But then that concept of, okay, we don't want control over people. That was then people thought, well, that means we don't want government control, so we want, just like completely free markets and blah blah blah. So then you end up with anarcho-capitalists, which I think is really silly. But if people want to call themselves anarcho-capitalists, that's cool. But I always think that like anarchism's like the no man's land we can all meet on and have a nice cup of tea. Just get rid of state, get rid of everyone, and just have
organized chaos.
Organized. Well, it's exactly. Well, it's not. This is the thing. It's not chaos. It's like.
Well, so chaos has a negative connotation. Again, like remember, right? We've defined these words, and everybody has like society picks like one part of a word's meaning and then ascribes to it, and then chaos can only mean like bad, but not really recognizing what the nature of it is. So I when I say organized chaos, I'm not saying it.
I know what you mean, like taking away the structures of society.
Think of it as like organized randomness, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's better.
I love all that stuff. I love the experimentation which happens as well. So you have the anarcho-syndicalists in the Spanish Revolution. You had a whole an area of Spain where they were able to self-govern, and it worked. People were fed, and everyone had enough.
Oh. You know what the argument is, right? The argument for that is that it won't work on the grand scale. You know what I mean? That's always the argument, right? It's by the people, by the people whose ends are not those. They'll always argue that it won't work on a grand scale because they need it to, work a certain way.
Well, it's hard to imagine though, isn't it? Because but again, it's like in feudalist Europe. If you were to tell Europe that it would be full of free markets and democracy. It's like that last episode of Game of Thrones when what's the big guy's called Sam, when Sam proposes democracy to the lords in Game of Thrones, they'll just laugh at him. They're like, it's ridiculous, what a stupid idea. And one of them's like, oh, should I give my horse a boat? So during the times of slavery, they thought something like feudalism would be impossible and a ridiculous idea. During the times of feudalism, they thought that democracy and free markets would be a ridiculous idea. For people to think that a more direct so anarchism really is like kind of a really localized version of democracy, isn't it? So you focus on your immediate area. People struggle to see that on a bit because during the time of feudalist Europe, there were these little flare-ups of democracy which happened here, there, and everywhere, but they only lasted a little while, just like the Spanish Revolution, just like saying that Rojava in northern Syria now, they kind of got this anarchist experiment going on at the moment, which seems to be successful. But there's these little instances where it happens, but you need the right technology. So, before the printing press, people were uneducated, they couldn't exchange ideas. How are they ever going to have be able to vote intelligently? Just because they haven't got access to information, they don't read. Whereas then when you have the printing press, you have the knowledge revolution, and suddenly everyone can read and they can exchange ideas, and then shortly after that you have the ability for people to be able to have make democratic decisions effectively.
It's the speed at which they can communicate those ideas that keeps increasing.
Yeah.
If we take a look at it, that is what it is.
Yeah. It's amazing. So I mean, when people say we have the internet, I mean I remember pre-internet, just about. And I'm still fairly young, so it's only within the past really 20 years that the internet's really happened, and things like free and open source software, and then something like Bitcoin, decentralized decision making. To think that these technologies aren't going to profoundly impact the way in which we govern our societies, the way we produce things, it's insane. Like, it is going to profoundly impact it, and it is more access to information. So people who've been marginalized, who haven't had a say in the past, are suddenly going to be able to have a say and make their voices heard. So I'm just kind of waiting for that to happen. Once the printing press was invented, it took a little while for the revolution to then happen, for then people to become more liberated. And it was bloody, which was bad. But I think this is probably why Marx thought, and this is one of the biggest problems of the sort of whole Marxist doctrine, is that he thought that all revolutions in the past have been bloody. So likely the revolution from capitalism to socialism would be bloody. And then that then almost gave a free pass to all those dictators who wanted to take control. And they thought, well, this bloody, me killing all these people and sending all these perfectly innocent people to the fields to work them to death is excusable because, the revolution will be bloody, like they wanted. They had the bloodlust. hopefully, by the nature of things like the internet, free and open source software, and things like Bitcoin, hopefully we can just Trojan like the system. We can just infect the system from within, and then give people more liberty and freedom without having to have like bloody revolution. But there is part of me which thinks if we have massive, ecological crisis, if we have huge climate change problems, mass immigration, hard borders, heavy conflict maybe in Europe, if we get all these right-wing governments and hard borders, then it could be more bloody than that. So, which I really wouldn't want. I want it to be slow and conservative, and but the world to me looks like it's getting more what's the word? Chaotic, more not chaotic, more like a tinderbox, ready to explode. Yeah. So and I think maybe the internet has a hand in that almost. Obviously, the way in which information is communicated does affect that. So yeah.
We also have the issue, right, with the internet, with the fact that and I remember this actually specific to Bitcoin. Okay, when I first got into Bitcoin, I could not tell the difference between FUD and fact, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like there's just so much, and I'm not just talking about Bitcoin specifically. I'm talking about crypto, shitcoins, the whole deal. Like it's like you can't even. When you don't know, it's like you can't even tell what's real, and it's kind of scary because depending on which news sources you're reading are going to paint what picture you're seeing. So you've got all these people thinking that something is happening, right? Like we creating the perception, and I mean it's like, who's going to be the fact checker? Right?
Yeah. Well,
we need an absolute. It's like you know what? It totally sounds like psychotic Big Brother dystopian future. Okay, because think about it. You need one source of information that is like the absolute truth.
But that doesn't exist, though.
It doesn't exist. It's impossible.
You need. But I will say,
truth from whose perspective?
I'm actually quite positive when it comes to all that stuff. Probably more than most, because say the kids I worked with, they were the most uneducated, impoverished children you can imagine. All pretty much 95% of them below the poverty line. So they changed though in the years in which I taught them. And one of the ways in which they changed is they had just access to information, and every night they would go home and watch all these YouTube videos, and most of it's crap. But I noticed a pattern over time that the kids, even the kids I was teaching, couldn't read or write, whatever, but the quality of data they were accessing became better and better over time. So me, you, like all of us who use the internet, we learn over time how to differentiate between the crap and the good sources of information. Some people, absolutely go down the wrong path and believe something too sincerely, like, for the flat earthers, for example. But then, they're so ridiculous that then becomes a joke, a meme, and then over time, people realize that there is misinformation on the internet. And I do actually think that we've obviously had some problems with misinformation. The whole world's had problems with it in the past couple of years. But I think over time, human brains. So, like, as a teacher, I think the very fact that human beings can stand up, walk around, and talk with each other means that their brains are geared to try and find good data, and learn from experience. But you've just got to give people access to good data. And then when they've got access to good data, or just data in general, their brains, just because they're humans and they're able to walk and talk, they will, over time, start to try and find the good data from the bad data. Particularly kind of kids who are kind of brought up on the internet, they'll try and find the good data. So I'm actually quite confident that in the next sort of 20, 30 years that human beings are going to become much better at being able to sort through information. I'll say as well, so those kids who I taught who couldn't read or write and would just be the worst poorly educated kids in a school, for example, and they would eventually be chucked down. They'd end up with us. They were all capable had you put them in different circumstances with loving, caring parents who nurtured them and fed them properly and sent them to a nice school. They were all capable of being some A students, grade A students, and there was nothing stopping. Some of them had some learning difficulties, obviously, which would make them struggle, but there was there was nothing. It was just the access to information, the access to good experiences and good data, which was holding them back. And I think the internet gives people access to good data and good information. So, so I am quite confident. I'm quite confident that people will just become much more, much better at just finding good information. Because they have the autonomy, and they're having to learn the hard way. That if they don't find it, they end up,
And if you and if you actually try to experiment and stuff like that based on that bad information, you'll quickly learn that the information is bad. And I think that's kind of to your point, right? Is that through the absorption of that information, they end up being able to destroy, if they're, again, depending on, I think it depends on the person, of course, right? And like you said, how badly they want to choose to, invest in whatever idea it is they're believing in. But if they're willing to be open-minded, look at the ideas, and then, actively, build them up as, true or false, then they're able to get to the point where the information that they're taking in is a lot better quality. And that's exactly what happened, even in my case was, after a while, the quality of the information got a lot better. And as a result, you can make clearer decisions. So that's pretty good.
I mean, you see it outside. There's this phenomenon of the these professors and intellectuals having huge views on YouTube for some of their content, and it's just normal people who finally start to realize that the time in which they have to themselves, where they can watch wherever they want to try and home in and watch something which is half decent, that has good information in it. So, absolutely. The world will get better. People will become freer and more liberated over time. Just gotta wait on it.
So so we're gonna switch gears now from triggering everybody in the political ideas and everything like that, and we're gonna go back into the lightning and tech stuff.
Sure, good.
So okay, so I feel like so based on everything that I know of you, I feel like you didn't tumble down the shitcoin rabbit hole. I feel like you may have avoided it. Is that?
I mean, I actually think that I don't think there's so much room for shitcoins, but I do think there's room for kind of community coins, but probably side chains off Bitcoin. I think in the future that we probably will have not fiat but kind of government coin, but it'll be
based off Bitcoin.
Based off Bitcoin,
yeah.
And they could even have maybe even some inflation in there, or they could have some sort of surplus recycling mechanism in there for say if they have some sort of economic issue. But in a way where if they take the piss too much, people can then switch out to Bitcoin, can't they? So I think that stuff will be experimented with, and I also quite like, I think for some communities of people, they like to have their own token which they can pass between them. I think my first experience of questioning what money was when I was a child. My mother, she was in this something called a babysitting circle. So it's just a group of friends, and they would take it in turns to babysit each other's kids. And when you babysit one of these kids, you get a little plastic ring, a little white plastic ring, and she had this just this thread of actually I think it was a ring, maybe like a ring of plastic, which she put these rings onto. And every time she babysat a child, she'd get one of these rings, so she'd thread it onto this big ring she had. And then, if she wanted to go out, my dad wanted to go out for the evening or whatever, they could one of her friends, she could pass on the ring to them, and then, kind of this token would be passed through that tiny little community of people. And I remember looking at these rings, and these little tiny plastic rings, and thinking imagine them as having value, these have some sort of value. This is someone's evening, they can. I must have been really young at the time, but I do think that there is room for people to have tokens and kind of like a community branded coin. And there's also some altcoins which I don't mind. Monero I think's really interesting and probably quite important. I'm someone who thinks that we need confidential transactions. So something like Monero for me, I think is something we need to keep in the wings, or at least have there just to see how it works. Whether they have an inflation bug which causes the whole thing to collapse,
So I don't, because obviously, like, like we're definitely going to have to talk about that. But I just wanted to say, so for Monero, the thing that got me away, and I shouldn't say away from privacy coins, but just really understanding their use case, because you're going back to, questioning what money was and those rings and everything. It's like that's one of the ways that I was able to, it's not debunk, but for me, like, be able to see privacy coins as not a store of value. I don't disagree with you that we need privacy layers. I don't disagree that we need confidential transactions, because part of being able to transact freely is part of free speech, I believe. So, and not just me, but people way smarter than me. So the thing is, though, I don't see them as a store of value, but I do see people going and, let's say, okay, if I need to do a confidential transaction, I can just, I can just go from Bitcoin to Monero, do my confidential transaction, and be done with it. I never actually need to store value in Monero. So that's what, not for, and let me rephrase that. I don't need to store value in Monero for a lengthy period of time. And it's not just Monero, like I'm picking on it, like there's nothing wrong with it. Like,
but I mean,
to me, it's any,
Monero's had some pretty nice gains.
Oh yeah, huge. No question. I'm totally not questioning it.
Has managed to store value, but
it has. It definitely has. I'm totally not questioning that. I'm just saying, for me, it's that.
Yeah. No, I think that in order to have like something which is truly fungible, you just need confidential transactions just on the base layer. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things. It's just, I think you need it, but I advocate the research in that. I think it's important. I don't think it's possible now. I don't think we've been able to do it now safely. But it's definitely something we should be thinking about. Particularly with the way the chain analysis stuff and how progressive that stuff's coming, how well that stuff's coming along. That's only just started, really, the chain analysis thing. So no, I think in order to have a truly fungible asset, it needs to be anonymous on the base layer. But yeah, now just mixing it on other layers and Lightning Networks works pretty well. So
I don't again, for that one, I don't disagree. Confidential transactions on the base layer. You know what? What I've always said is, as long as they can't obfuscate the 21 million cap.
Well, this is the problem.
That is.
Measure it, can you?
It's like, but that's the key, because I'm telling you, once they get rid of that, it's fucking fiat. That's it. It's totally ruined. We may as well be fucking buying shitcoins.
And this is the worry. This is the worry with Monero, that just more Monero somehow is being pumped into the system, and you just don't know. You just can't tell. You can't account for all the coins. So no, I agree completely. But it's still something we need to look at. So I like Monero. I think keep Monero. And also Litecoin. I like Litecoin. I think a lot of people forget this, but in 2017 when we had the SegWit stuff, was it 17, wasn't it? I lose track of years now. I think it was 17. No, 17 was the pump, wasn't it? It must have been 16.
Yeah, 2017.
When the SegWit stuff was going on, and there was a period where the miners weren't signaling for SegWit, and you had the UASF stuff, and Litecoin got SegWit in, because obviously it's a bit more centralized, so Charlie can just ask his mining mates to push SegWit and get SegWit. And that's cool, because it's like it's a smaller community of people, so whatever.
God!
It's the privilege of being able to. But I remember at that time, Bitcoiners saying, "Well, worst comes to worst, we'll just move to Litecoin. If we can't get SegWit in, and the miners just don't let us get control and put SegWit, don't listen to the will of the people, the community as a whole. We can just move to Litecoin."
I personally wasn't around back then, so I can't really comment on that.
They really did. So if there's some other things which we desperately need, and we can't get, it's hard fork in, and we just can't hard fork into Bitcoin for whatever reason, having something like Litecoin there, which may be a little bit more centralized now, but as soon as we all move over there, it won't be as centralized. Again, it's not a bad thing to have around. I don't like ICOs. I don't like all the RC20 stuff, but there's a couple of the older coins I quite like. I think they're interesting projects. They've got nice people good people, interesting people working on them, and they've served Bitcoin and they've been useful for Bitcoin at some point. So I wouldn't say that I'm a maximalist in that I think Bitcoin is the standard. The Bitcoin is the backbone to everything, including society in the future one day. But which I suppose is pretty maximalist. But I don't completely disregard some of these altcoins. I do the shit coins, the ICOs and all that stuff. It's obviously they can just all burn for all I care. But
Exactly. In a lot of those cases, it's like I've said in the past as well. A lot of the times, if you remove the token, you just have a software platform that you should have built without a token.
Oh yeah.
It's like
it's .com stuff though. Like so, again, I mean, I don't So I think Liquid Network has got a lot of legs, and some of the assets which you can issue on there has got. I want them to do for someone to organise a couple of hack days around it, because I think that's that could be really interesting. But the idea of being able to issue an asset backed by some token, backed by something, or based off something like Bitcoin, is powerful, and it will be used for something important one day. DAOs, I think DAOs one day will work, and they'll be a very important part of our society. And again, like as a bit of a socialist, like the decentralized autonomous organization, where the people who own the asset are the ones who make the decisions over the organization. So the classic example was the decentralized Uber by Andreas talking about the decentralized Uber using a DAO, where they get instead of where the Uber drivers get 80% of the fare, the decentralized Uber driver would get like 98%, and then 2% would go to bounties to the free and open source software which they're all using to organize their taxi services. I like that stuff. To me, that's what that is. It's a worker co-op with a very clever bit of software behind it, and decentralized decision making in a corporation like that, or a cooperative like that, is interesting to me. So, and again, it's just like .com. Like when in the .com bubble, you had all these like crap websites with all these far out ideas, but the kernels of some of those ideas have now carried on into the actual internet as we know it. Like video streaming platforms, back in the late 90s, just absolutely abysmal. But now video streaming is so important, like what we're doing right now. It's just people know it. This technology is good, and they kind of know some of the tools which they can use in this technology, but they just don't know how to implement them, and the technology itself isn't quite ready for it yet. It's sort of raining here. I don't know what it sounds like on your end. Is it okay?
No, I don't hear it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's quite heavy on the roof here because I'm in the attic. I'm not completely dismissive of all these projects. I think there's probably some good in there, which we can explore on Bitcoin in time, conservatively and soberly, and not get too carried away and put too much funds in them. But,
Exactly. See, like that's the point, right? It's like I don't dismiss those projects. I mean, I do see them as an attack on Bitcoin in a certain way, but at the same time, the double-edged sword to that is that if the technology is really good and it's really robust, then it may end up going into Bitcoin. So that could be cool. So so switching away a little bit from the from the Bitcoins and the shitcoins and stuff. Let's talk about the M5 stack. So as you know, like I was desperately trying to. I got the. If I had an OpenNode account, I would have gotten that to go. But I really wanted to just get the Raspberry Blitz one. Man, I really love the. Anyways, thank you very much for your help with that. How's that coming along?
It's coming along really well. There's because obviously just for anyone listening who doesn't know any of the stuff I've done.
Yeah, let's back it up.
By the way, it's ArcBTC on GitHub, so ARCBTC.
We're going to put that in the show notes.
Yeah, cool. And there's a playlist on World Crypto Network as well with some of the tutorials. So I saw that there were lots of people interested in hardware and obviously development as well in Bitcoin and experimenting with nodes, for example, and Raspberry Pis and Rock64s and all this stuff. But there wasn't anyone really experimenting with microcontrollers and building things with microcontrollers. And there's actually an interview by Andreas in which he said, in the future, if there's an Internet of Things which is owned and regulated by corporations and companies such as Google and Amazon, it's going to suck. They're all going to listen in on you, and it's just going to be a tool for state to it's going to be like Big Brother, except we buy the devices. Whereas if the users take control of the hardware, then actually an Internet of Things could be very exciting and could push society and humanity forward. Again, on the left,
Again.
I was like, hell yeah.
The social layer.
I don't want Amazon to have control of my IoT. So I think it's really important that we have free and open source alternatives. So I picked a microcontroller, which I try and base all my work off, which is the ESP32. And that's by a company called Espressive. But they've open sourced all their software, and the hardware itself is more or less like 100% free and open source stuff. So, but a bit like the Raspberry Pi as well. It's kind of like the Commie microcontroller. It's the one everyone uses, so it's the most robust microcontroller. The one, and there's lots of kind of like variations of it. So companies buy the actual just microcontroller chip itself, and then they build their own development boards around it, and they're all really cheap. You can buy like an ESP32 development board for like $5, and that's powerful enough to do like get and post requests over HTTP, which is requires quite a lot of power. And you can also plug things like displays and keypads into it, and sensors and things. So, and you can also you can retrofit them into stuff. So, one of the projects I did in San Francisco is I retrofitted these 6 arcade machines using just an ESP32 and a screen. The ESP32 just connected to OpenNode, asked for an invoice, displayed it on the screen, someone paid it, and then the ESP32 is checking to see if the invoice has been paid. Once it's been paid, it just then refreshes and makes a new invoice. And then when you pay the invoice, it just triggers a little relay, which then triggers the coin mechanism. So the machine thinks that a coin's going to the system. And it's a very non-invasive retrofitting. And I retrofit like vending machines. I've got a vending machine behind me. I'm working on another vending machine, which has been a pain in the ass. But if I get that project to work, it'd be cool. So you can retrofit them into a lot of, they're small, they don't require much power. They've got some amazing functions. So one of their best functions, the SP32, is you can put into kind of a deep sleep mode. Where you can specify what parts of the microcontroller you want to stay on. So it can just be listening for like a button press, or for it can have a time. It can be just keeping an eye on the time. So you can have one of these microcontrollers just wake up once a day. So one of the projects I made was a Bitcoin price checker. It wakes up every 3 hours, checks the price, displays it on an e-paper screen, goes back to sleep. And on, I have these 1,000 milliamp hour batteries, the little lithium ion square batteries. And on one of those, if it's 0.04 milliamps when it's asleep for 3 hours, and then it wakes up and it consumes 30 milliamps or something for about, 20 seconds, and then goes back to sleep again. And you've got, a 1,000 milliamp hour battery. That little device is just going to run for months and months. So, so they're low powered. They've got loads of really interesting functionality built in. You can do Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. I built some mesh network stuff with them. They're great. They're absolutely great. So everything I build, I try and base off that little microcontroller. And then if people buy the hardware, then they can use it in all of the experiments. The M5 stack is a little uncharacteristic for me because that's a separate company, M5. They make that. And the base microcontroller inside of it is an ESP32.
Yeah.
But it has this really nice form factor. It's got a nice screen, nice buttons. It's got these button.
I love it. I love that keypad, by the way. All of them, the way they feel.
Yeah. You can make a little Game Boy out of the thing, or I've used them to make a point of sale terminal for accepting Bitcoin payments over Lightning Network. So they're great, but they're a little bit more expensive. They're like $50, $60 or something. Then you got to wait a while to get them from China.
Oh, by the way, I want to add about that because one of the guys that I talked to about Bitcoin was also doing some research. You can get them off of Amazon, okay, and you can get them faster. So, because I did like you, I ordered them directly from M5, and I waited 3 weeks. They're more expensive
though.
They are.
Amazon, yeah,
they are.
In the UK, it's like $80, whereas if you buy it from AliExpress, you get about $55.
Yeah.
From the shop. But you have to wait, forever to get it. But
it all depends on, are you willing to spend to have it faster? Sorry, continue.
But they're a lot of fun. They're great. And that project, the M5, I call it M5 Stack Sats, which is just meant to be, isn't it?
It is. It totally is.
Project. I sent one to Christian Rutzel in Berlin, and he's taken it to Room 77, which is like an iconic bar in Berlin. the first bar to accept Bitcoin. It's run by this old school cypherpunk, pre-Bitcoin Bitcoiner dude, Jorg, and he loves the little device. And he's been,
sick.
it's brilliant. I mean, like a lot of people say, why don't you choose a phone or an iPad? And it's like, well, you know, we're trying to reinvent money here. That makes sense because, you know, money needs to be reinvented. You know, we need a better form of money. But look at all the point of sale terminals out there in the world. Like the majority of them are custom built, like specifically serve a purpose. It's not going to get taken off by one of your employees. It's just a little low-powered device you can make a payment on with a card or whatever. So we should be simulating that. Like, there's no harm in building similar devices, similar simple devices. You key in an amount, and then you can make a payment on it.
So I want to touch on that, okay? Because what you're saying is makes a lot of sense, and I think is some bigger picture adoption type of ideas. Because the reality is that for people to move in, they need to feel comfortable. For people to feel comfortable, it needs to feel familiar. So when you come in with a pay terminal and they don't really know or really even care that it's Lightning in the background, they just know that, hey, this whole setup is costing me less to implement and I'm paying less on fees for transactions and I get to settle every day. It's mine.
And it looks the
you know,
same
so it's like,
yeah.
so to me, I think it's an absolute, like it's a logical jump that we do this. So yeah. Awesome.
I'm also like, I'm a bit of a doom and gloomer. Like, I think this like world economy Jenga shit show could collapse on itself. Yeah, I remember 2008, and it happened very quickly.
It did.
I heard like one or two things on the radio, you know, where there were these big landlords who had lots of property selling it. But I got a little bit nervous because I just bought property. I remember hearing that, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, boom! You know, the whole financial system could end, and there could be lines down the street for bread and all that stuff.
All of a sudden, everyone's poor.
All of a sudden,
you know, it's like that's it. Two news stories, and like, but that's the thing, right? Once it comes out on the news, it's already too late.
Now, this time, when it happens, because before, what were you going to do? You're going to go buy some gold? Like, what are the options really? But this time, and Bitcoin has a name for itself. Like, people know that Bitcoin is, you know, an opt-out. If you can't trust money, and now when it happens, Bitcoin is going to be discussed really seriously as a way of sending value to one another. So I think it's important we have these. I mean, if we have an easily accessible device, where there's lots of these devices which exist, and we can quickly switch them over and turn them into point of sale terminals and get them into shops and things, and people can start using Bitcoin. Like, I think that's something worth doing. Actually, one of the coolest projects I've made, we've been experimenting with the ESP32, and Stepan Snigarov's been helping me with it, and he's been doing it as well. And Justin Moon as well has been doing it. Is turning these devices into hardware wallets.
Yes.
And I think a free and open source DIY hardware wallet maker community in Bitcoin is much needed.
Yeah, I agree.
Hardware wallets are too expensive. I mean, so here's one of the more recent ESP32s I've got here. This is from M5. This actually isn't ESP32 based. It's based on another microcontroller, which is really confusing me. But what's very cool about this is by M5.
Yeah, this is the stick, right? The stick?
Yeah, this is a stick. Has a tiny little camera. And it has a screen which is big enough to be able to display Bitcoin transactions. So what you can do, you can, when you set up your wallet, for example, you can take a photo and then you can hash through that photo to get decent entropy. So you have like a random number kind of generator thing, and that'll help build your seed. And then we have a Bitcoin wallet on here. You can communicate, so you can scan a transaction, sign it on the device, and then display the signed transaction on the device for somebody else. The other one they have, which is this one here, it's got a nice little form factor. This is ESP32 based, and you can also make a hardware wallet with this little device I've been trying to work on as well at the moment. What's really cool is I was talking to Stepan and Christian as well. Christian had the idea that, say if you have some horrible post-apocalyptic, you know, something terrible happens, financial crisis, war, you know, Terminators. There's all these little devices. So if you go into your local hardware store and you look at some of the IoT and light bulbs or whatever else, or the Nest things for your boiler, they'll have little ESP32s and they'll have little microcontrollers which can do internet stuff. And you can get one of those and repurpose it and turn it into a hardware wallet. So worst comes to worst, like there's all these little, as well as all the old phones as well you could use. So you could build like a global financial infrastructure, and have some sort of global economy, or access to some sort of global economy in some sort of crazy post-apocalyptic dystopian world, which I don't think is going to happen. But I think it's really important that people just take control of the hardware.
I agree.
The M5 stack. One of the coolest things about the M5 is, so when I made the point of sale terminal, and then Justin Moon made his hardware wallet as well, and then there was a bunch of people getting excited about the terminal. I like CC'd M5 on all the Twitter conversations, and they started liking posts. And now I've spoken to them, and they're seriously considering making a specific point of sale terminal face for the M5 stack.
Dude,
for us Bitcoiners,
this would be amazing. Yeah. I would buy one 100%.
Absolutely. So they're listening to the Bitcoin community, and then we're able to bring that microcontroller community into the Bitcoin. And microcontrollers are so relevant for Bitcoin. You've got these little devices
to
send information to one another. So it's, to send value to one another is like the next step, isn't it? And Bitcoin's the thing to be able to do that with.
So I wanted to bring up something about the M5 stack, because I was looking at some of the accessories, and I noticed that there's an LTE module, and there's a GSM module as well. So, because I'm just thinking about the point of sale terminal, like for people working in I'm thinking of more nomadic point of sale terminal situations. It would be good to have a an install that we could do that the person could connect up to their LTE network. So that way, or connect up to the LTE network to be able to use their node from home, for payments. So now they just, they leave their node at home, and all they bring with them is these little pay terminals.
Yeah, so right? M5, all they've really done is they've taken all the hardware and sensors and little
separated
modules, which are made for Arduino, and they just put it into a really nice form factor.
Yeah.
I've got a GSM. I got an ESP32 with a little built-in SIM card slot, which I've played with, like trying to send Bitcoin transactions through and things. And yeah, totally. I mean, it's not like with this stuff, we need a community of people making things, because there's too many ideas. Like this.
Oh yeah.
What you said is a great idea, and it just requires someone to sit down, hack away for a month, and they'll make this thing, and people will find it useful, and it will benefit our community. It will benefit Bitcoiners. I got to stop calling it a community because it really triggers people. But it'll benefit Bitcoiners, for people to be building, experimenting on this hardware. So yeah, I want as many people to get involved as possible. And it's not, as you've experienced, it's kind of like when you download Arduino and start playing around with the Arduino IDE, it's like a little bit of a steep learning curve just to begin with.
Yeah.
But then once you break the back of it, and it really is hacking. Like you just change a line here, change a line there, get it to say something else, Once you break the back of it and you spend a little bit of time on it, you can really. I mean, I'm not a developer by any means, and I'm technically actually not that good, but I've just spent enough time fiddling around on the Arduino IDE to be able to take control of these little devices. So if I can do it, anyone else can do it. Christ, and there's so many good. So the mesh networking with these little devices, these little microcontrollers. That's such important work. I hope people will take up and start playing around with the hardware wallets, the point of sale terminals, retrofitting devices to accept Bitcoin, and turn things on when Bitcoin's accepted through them. There's just so many projects you can make.
I totally agree. I totally
agree. It's actually really nice on Twitter. I'll because I'm sort of building a house on the side at the moment, and so I've had a week or so where I haven't really done any Bitcoin stuff. But then I went on my Twitter, and there was just loads of people CCing me on projects they'd made. Not loads, maybe like half a dozen or something. People CCing me on projects they'd made, but they were inspired by this project, So projects I'd done, and they then taken it forward and made something else out of. And that was brilliant. It's the best thing to see that, and it's a funny experience as well, because normal no coiner, non-techy people, legacy people, the analog people, when you explain to them what you're making, they're like, oh, can you patent it, and can you make money off it? And it's like, no, it's free enough to solve.
Yes.
And they're like, what?
Why would you do that? Why?
Why would you make something free and open source?
So you don't get paid?
You don't get paid.
You know.
But then the rate of innovation, the next day, like one of the projects I made, which is a sweet machine project with a little e-paper module, which displayed a QR code, you paid it, and it spat some sweets out. The next day, when I put that on Twitter, like somebody had retrofitted that into a pinball machine, and so you could pay for a credit on the pinball machine, and it got loads of likes and got Bitcoiners really excited. So just the rate of innovation when you don't have proprietary control over software and over ideas, and projects like this is it's great. But there is something quite, to begin with, quite hard about like having an idea, making something, and then giving it to the world for free, and then seeing other people make stuff, sometimes which is better than your stuff as well, and thinking, oh man, that's my idea. He's doing better.
Yeah. But okay, this is the difference between the person that wants to innovate and the person that like it's a certain amount of you know what, people can call it selfish, but also I think it's also a little bit selfless, because you know, going back to that point you made before about the no coiners, that is the biggest, I'd say it's the number one thing that I hear from anybody, because they'll, you know, it's like I'll tell them about Bitcoin, I'll tell them about the Lightning nodes, I'll tell them about, you know, me building all these cases, and you know, and they're like, so you're buying all this hardware? It's like, yeah. It's like, you make any money off of this? I'm like, no. and like for some reason it's like at that point I'm just a moron, you know. It's like, okay, so what the hell?
Ride.
You know, it's like, so okay, so big deal, I'm not getting paid. I gotta tell you, man, a lot of people that went on to do great things, and I'm not saying I will, I don't really care, but what I'm saying is that they did it because they wanted to. They did it because they wanted to satisfy their own curiosity. So you know what? If you're just doing shit because you're getting paid, then you're doing it for the wrong freaking reason.
No, the engineers and the inventors of this world historically have just done it because they wanted to experiment.
That's right.
To make stuff. And then someone's seen commercial value, maybe taken it forward and made something commercially, some sort of commercial thing out of it, or they have even. But the original drive is just, they just want to make cool stuff.
That's
right.
They
just want to hack around and make cool stuff and then share it with their mates, you know?
Exactly.
Maybe we are all morons, but to me, free and open source is definitely the way forward, and not the proprietary mentality.
Well, you know what? You moron or not, I could tell you this, okay? Yeah. From my experience, from doing everything I've ever done just because I wanted to do it, I learned the most.
Yes.
I learned the most, and I retained the most about what I learned. And in the end, it ended up being...
too.
Yeah.
You were the most productive at that. Like, this is like the teaching stuff. Like, I worked hard when I was a teacher, and like, you know, we did some good work with some kids, but I swear I've produced more, and I've given more back to society in general, humanity in general, just fiddling around and playing with these microcontrollers. Just because if you're giving those ideas out to the world for free as well, other people can take those ideas and it can inspire other people to make things, and then maybe even build businesses, or I don't know, whatever else. So I swear, this is that phrase, each to his own ability, each to his own need. I just think it's so true. Like,
I agree.
Contribute where you can, and contribute on what you enjoy, and then that's where you'll be most productive. I mean, it's a bit of a bullshit statement in a way, I suppose, because no one's going to think, well, I really enjoy cleaning toilets, but maybe we'll get the robots to do that in the future.
Exactly.
In our free and open source society.
So man, we're coming up on over an hour together, and I think like we could just keep going on and on.
I could keep going forever.
I know, it's awesome. But we'll cut it at this point, and if anybody, how about this? Okay, so if anybody wants to reach you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can hit me on Twitter if you want, and I've got a policy of not blocking or muting, so you can be as mean as you want on Twitter.
I'll post your details in the show notes.
Thing on there. And then if not Twitter, then hit me on GitHub. I'm really bad with GitHub. Because before these big projects I've been building over the past sort of year, just about almost a year, I hadn't really done much on GitHub, you know. So I'm just really bad at like following up on issues and things. I'm getting better. I need to look into how to actually sort of run proper, particularly now because some of the repos that they're having contributors and people suggesting things on, I need to start listening to them a little bit more. So if you want to communicate with me, hit me up on Twitter. If you you want to look at my stuff, go on ArcBTC on GitHub. Now, if you want to look at some of the videos, go to the playlist on World Crypto Network. I am going to be running a workshop in TCConf in Romania, so the Transylvania Crypto Conference.
Cool.
Which is going to be ace. I can't wait for it. It's going to be great. I'm not sure what the tutorial is going to be on. I actually thought about just doing something simple because I ordered a whole bunch of these ESP32s with a really nice built-in TFT screen.
Yeah.
So I thought about maybe just making just a Bitcoin price checker, or a Bitcoin price checker stroke like node information retriever thing displayer. So like just have it do, you know, the what is it, the V1 get info get request on the LND, and just return info about a node and then display it on the little screen, or just do like a Bitcoin price ticker thing just to get people playing with Arduino and then the little microcontrollers.
Yes.
I kind of think that the people who can do the more advanced projects, they can just go do it at home. But just like giving people, you want the noobs who've never used Arduino, who've never used this hardware at all before in the past, to just do a really simple project, which they'll probably use as well. Like they could plug it into a little battery and then stick it in their kitchen and look at the price of Bitcoin every now and then, whatever. So I think maybe I'll do that. In the Lightning Conference, which is the next week after that, so the Transylvania Crypto Conference, which has got some incredible speakers there. Actually, I think Adam Back's going. I heard.
Oh, nice.
A couple of days ago, yeah. And we got some great speakers. That's on, when is that? That's October the 10th, I think. And then the 10 days after that in Berlin, on like the 19th and the 20th, we've got the Lightning Conference there. So I'm going to do a workshop there too. But that's going to be a little bit more advanced. So I'm going to do like a point of sale kind of workshop. And there it'll probably be like, if people want to come to me and make a point of sale, I'll have a whole bunch of kits and they can come and sit down and make them with me. And then after that, there's BitBrum. So if you're in the UK, there's a really good conference in Birmingham, which not a lot of people talk about so much, but it's a great conference, BitBrum. And there I'll be doing a couple of workshops there, playing with the hardware as well. So very keen on just educating people and getting these devices out to people so they can start experimenting. All my workshops will be completely free. So yeah, and the hardware will be free as well. So just come along and then build something if you're at one of those conferences.
Very cool, man. Very, very cool.
And I encourage you as well. So some people who are building some of these projects, maybe the point of sale terminal, run some workshops in your local Bitcoin meetup and try and get people and maybe give out, Christmas presents or birthday presents by some of these microcontrollers, ESP32 microcontrollers, and then give them out to some of your Bitcoin friends and get them to experiment with them. We need to take control of the hardware. It's important.
Totally agreed. And I got to still figure out what's wrong with my script.
So you're connecting to your node, aren't you?
I'm trying to. I didn't put in the details, but my whole point was that I couldn't get I compiled both scripts, the OpenNode one and the Raspberry Blitz one, and the Raspberry Blitz one fails to compile, whereas my OpenNode one compiled. And I sent you all the. Do you know what
I think I need to do is just make a really simple project where you get the M5 stack just to connect to your node and then return the name of your node and put it on the screen. Because that's kind of like, because then you know you've connected to it, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you can also, because it'd be simple, you'd be able to look through the code and kind of figure out what's going on.
Yes.
And then from that, then people could go on and do the actual full point of sale terminal. Maybe like a stepping stone. I could make like a node checker and just get it to display the info about the node, like how many channels it's got and its capacity and stuff. Maybe.
That'd be really cool.
I'll stick that on the M5.
Very cool.
And then you could go from there. Then that might make sense. Maybe I'll do that this afternoon. I'll show you. Well, I suppose people aren't going to be able to see either because it's a podcast.
Yeah.
But I've got a cool project here. I'm building like an ATM thing. So.
Oh, cool.
This is what I love about Bitcoin, man. Like
we'll put it in the roundtable number 5. You'll have to when we do the video.
And again, like on the subject of getting involved, there's so many little pockets of innovation and people doing interesting stuff where you can get involved. You can be a complete technical noob, and like you can just say if you want to help, go download Zap Wallet and then run it and then play around with it until you break it for some reason, and then report back to Tom on the GitHub whatever and say why you broke it and how you broke it. All that stuff's like helpful, to people developing stuff. They need people testing their software. So you can contribute. You can you just contribute where you can. But one of the little pockets of innovation I see in Lightning Network at the moment, which no one really talks about, but it's flipping awesome, is there's a group of people building a standard for wallets, for Lightning Network wallets, and it's called Lnurl. And
yes.
You've heard.
Yes,
about
yes.
Lnurl.
I actually posted it in some previous show notes. It might have been mentioned in the roundtable number 2, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
It's great, man. And I recently just built a faucet, like a lightning faucet, where it's just displays QR code. You go up to it, you scan it with a wallet, and it gives you 100 satoshis, and that's it. You don't need to make any channels.
I think isn't Ross from Lightning Gifts? Lightning.gifts?
Yeah,
I think
what
he's
I'm using.
involved with that. Yeah,
API.
Man, he's awesome.
He's cool, man.
Yeah, man, he's a very cool guy.
Well, they're one of the new standards they've done is Lnurl Pay, which now means you can have a static QR code. So
that's very cool.
So instead of having to generate a new QR code every time you want to pay, you just have the same QR code and you can just keep paying it and paying it and paying it and paying it. So on my sweep machine now, I don't even need a screen. I just have a printed QR code, stuck on it. And you can argue, well, that's a security vulnerability. Somebody could stick a QR code over the top of it, and it's like, yeah, that's true. But when the sweep machine doesn't spit out any sweets, they'll complain to the guy who owns the sweep machine, and the guy who owns the sweep machine will see someone stuck a QR code over the top of it. But there are some applications, so like, again, come back to good old the prophet Andreas. He did a talk and he was talking about money streaming, in Bitcoin, in Lightning Network, you can have money streaming. And you can, when you have a static QR code, you can say, okay, I want this static QR code to work until, I've made 10,000 satoshis on this service. So say if you're doing content streaming, you click on a video and then you make payments until you complete the video, until you filled up that static QR code, and then it generates a new QR code. So you have this ability to start streaming money for content, or streaming money for, I think one of the examples was for making a payment where you're say if you've got like an insurance, your car insurance or whatever, then you would pay for the car insurance at the time in which you're actually in the car, or you have different people in the car, your insurance could change. So we can start experimenting with actually particularly on Lightning Network, with these micro payments, with these static invoices. So Lnurl is great. I mean, I don't know. I think some of the functionality eventually may become protocol layer stuff, but it's always better to keep the protocol as simple as possible. So if we can have it as a sort of stack on top of the protocol, that's better. So I love Lnurl, and again, it's a really small community of developers. If you can just go to Lightning Gifts, play around with it, look at the API, try and build something off it, dedicate some time to doing that, and you will contribute to the ecosystem in some way, and you will help lots of other Bitcoiners. So just get involved. People just get involved in building and helping people build cool stuff.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to
good work.
I look forward to having you on the future roundtables.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Thanks for organising the roundtables as well. They're great. I think we all kind of really like to be able to touch base with a bunch of other people interested in Lightning Network and discuss, things which have been happening in the ecosystem. So no, it's really great. Thanks for organising that. And I will speak soon, man. Cheers for that.
Very cool. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that does it for us on another Fun with Bitcoin episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter or Telegram, I'm at CoinIcarus. If you want to shoot me an email, I'm funwithbitcoin@protonmail.com. All of BTC Socialist's information will be in the show notes for the projects that he mentioned and his GitHub. Thank you all for listening. Catch you all next time.